what's happened to good jobs? So does globalization mean that the way in which firms ought to compete is on a cost basis, by keeping wages as low as possible? And have good jobs disappeared? Have the jobs that we thought about, that again Steve alluded to, you know, the high-paying job that offered you some security and some career path, have they disappeared? Has this led to lots of job loss in the United States? Do we need to protect jobs? What about low-wage workers? Have their jobs disappeared? Are there no more jobs available for low-wage workers? Are all low-wage jobs necessarily bad jobs? So I'm going to take a look at some of these. In terms of competing and offering the lowest possible wages, what we actually found was that the highest productivity businesses, and again this confirms what Vivek said, have actually high wages, they have a higher quality workforce, they have a low turnover of workers, and this appears to be a profit maximizing strategy in the sense that they are more likely to survive. You can think of examples of this. Wegmans is an example, Nordstrom's is an example, Costco relative to Walmart. Costco has done very, very well by offering higher wages, having a unionized workforce, and retaining their employees. I met a guy and shared a cab with him who was coming in from England, and they were starting up Tesco. And some of you may have heard about this, that Tesco has opened up in California. And so I said to him, I was busy preparing the presentation for CEOs for Cities, and I said to him, how are you setting your wage strategies at Tesco? Are you going kind of for the bottom of the line, or are you going, you know, trying to pay higher wages and attract a higher quality workforce? And he said, well, you know, 15 years ago at Tesco, what we did was we went for low-wage workers. We just thought the way to cut costs was to go for low-wage workers. And he said, that's not a profitable strategy. What we have learned since then is to go for high-wage, low-turnover workforce, and that's been a very important secret to our success. So I think that's a very important message, that going for low wages is not a profitable strategy because those firms are less likely to survive. The other thing that we found is that we think of productivity growth as being due to investment in R&D, investment in structures, and investment in equipment. That's not where most of productivity growth comes from. This process of economic turbulence whereby more productive firms enter and grow and less productive firms exit and die is a very large reason for the productivity growth in the United States. So that creative turbulence is something that should be embraced and worked with rather than trying to stop. What we found was that where you work can, in terms of the industry and the firm characteristics, can be more important than the education level. So in other words, the firm pay-setting strategies can matter more than your individual characteristics. And what I mean by firm pay-setting strategies is, so you take observationally identical workers. And remember, we have lots of information about the characteristics of these workers, not just their education level, but also their earnings and employment histories and a wide variety of sets of factors. And we can observe them as they move from firm to firm. And we can also observe how much firms pay observationally different workers. And what we do see is that even within these quite narrowly defined industries, and regardless of how narrowly we define it, we find that firms in very similar industries pay widely different wages to observationally equivalent workers. So what that means is, if you take a worker and you drop them in at Walmart, they're going to get one salary. You take that same worker and drop them in at Costco, and they're going to make a lot more. We were able to use the same universe of data and look at workers who were low wage for long periods of time and then track them for subsequent periods. And what we found was that 8% of the workforce is low wage in a given 3-year period. And what, again, we find that most of these move out of low wage, although it does vary a great deal by age and race and sex. but that what matters for their movement out of low-wage work is that they land with one of these high-pay firms. And you know, my Uncle John, who I think he finished high school, he would have said, they paid you how much to figure this out? But it is important to note, everyone of course knows this, otherwise you wouldn't spend so much time searching for the right job. But the point is, putting the role of the firm front and center in the policy debate is a critical debate, because understanding what the firms are doing is as important as or more important than the education level of the workers. If you're going to get out of low-wage work, the critical thing that you have to do is to move. The final thing is, are all low-wage jobs bad jobs? There's been a great deal of debate about the role, for example, of the temporary help industry, and thinking that those are bad jobs. What we actually find is many low-wage jobs, particularly in the temporary help industry, act as a transition, as a portal from unemployment to employment. And certainly the labor market outcomes for those who actually land in even in a low-wage firm, but one that provides useful transition, like the temporary help services, is better than remaining unemployed. The outcomes for workers who stayed unemployed are far worse than the ones who got at least a foot on the bottom rung of the economic ladder. We found overwhelmingly that trying to draw big picture stories at the aggregate economy level was misleading. Every industry had very different patterns, and understanding what's going on in every particular industry is critical for formulating policy. And obviously you need data, and I've been saying this for as long as most of you have known me. You need data by industry and geographic area and by type of worker in order to really understand what's going on in their particular labor market and to understand what's going on with the dynamics of change.